The village lay nestled deep within the mist-laden valleys of the northeast, a place untouched by time, where the whispers of ancestors carried through the rustling leaves. Here, the art of tattooing was more than decoration. It was a sacred language, a covenant between flesh and spirit. Among the villagers, Mahima was the last keeper of this ancient craft. Bent with age, her fingers remained steady, tracing ink on his skin with the precision of someone who had spent a lifetime weaving stories into flesh. Her hut, on the edge of the settlement, smelled of crushed herbs and charred wood. Few dared to visit her, save for those desperate for the protection of her ink. To them, she was both revered and feared, a woman who had walked too closely with the spirits, who had seen too much. Yet once long ago she had been young. Mahima had not always lived in the shadows. In her youth, she had been the pride of her people, a gifted healer and tattooist, known for her beauty and skill. Her laughter had once rung through the village like birdsong, but those days had vanished like smoke, stolen by love and betrayal. It had begun in the season of monsoon, when the rivers swelled and the sky hung heavy with the scent of wet earth. That was when she had met him, Aaron, a warrior from a rival tribe. Their lands had warred for generations, and yet, when she first saw him across the river, spear in hand, there had been no enmity in his eyes, only wonder. Their first meeting was an accident. She had gone to gather herbs along the water's edge when she found him wounded, a deep gash running across his shoulder. Instinct had overruled caution, and she had knelt beside him, pressing cloth to the wound, whispering words of healing. He had studied her then, his breath unsteady, his fingers brushing her wrist as if committing the moment to memory. "You should leave," he had murmured. "You should be grateful," she had countered. And so it began. Their stolen meetings became a ritual. Beneath the cover of darkness, they met where the river bent, where the trees leaned close as though guarding secrets. He spoke of his world, of battles fought and won, of the weight of expectation on his shoulders. She spoke of ink and spirits, of the way the past lived on in the markings she carved into skin. He traced the tattoos on her arm one evening, his touch reverent. "What do they mean?" "They tell my story," she said. "And what story would you write for us?" She had no answer, not then. Love had crept upon her quietly, entwining itself with her heartbeat, making a home in her ribs. Yet they both knew their love was doomed. The night they were discovered, the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and betrayal. The elders had followed her, their faces carved from stone, their eyes brimming with judgment. Aaron was dragged before them, his hands bound, his fate already sealed. The punishment for consorting with the enemy was death. Mahima had thrown herself before them, her voice cracking as she begged for his life. "Let him go. I will bear the punishment. Spare him." But mercy was not a thing given freely. The village elder, a man whose skin was a tapestry of age and ink, had stared at her for a long moment before speaking. "You wish to defy the spirits for a man who does not belong to us." His voice was cold. "Then the spirits shall take what you cherish most." A shaman was summoned, ancient and hollow-eyed. He lifted a hand, fingers curling like gnarled roots. The words he spoke were older than time, a language not meant for the living. Mahima had felt it then, the weight of something unseen pressing upon her, threading into her veins like poison. By dawn, Aaron was gone. Whether he had fled or been taken, she never knew. But when she awoke, her reflection in the river was no longer her own. Her skin had withered, her hair streaked with white. Her youth had been stolen, drained away in a single night. The punishment was cruel, meant not just to mark her, but to exile her. No man would look upon her now, no home would welcome her. She had become a relic, a warning to those who would put love above duty. Years passed. The village forgot, but Mahima remained, her hands steady, her ink flowing, etching pain into permanence. Her love had been erased, but her story was carved into skin, a tale only the spirits remembered. The village had long whispered of Mahima's curse, of the love that had cost her youth, and the ink that still flowed from her hands. Few dared to approach her, save for those who needed her tattoos to ward off spirits or seek protection from unseen forces. She had accepted her place in solitude, her days spent weaving ink into flesh, each mark a testament to fate's cruelty. It was on a night when the wind carried the scent of rain that her quiet world was disrupted. A soft knock came at the threshold of her hut. Visitors were rare, and those who came usually hesitated, unsure whether they sought wisdom or risked misfortune by being in her presence. Yet this knock was firm, insistent. When she opened the door, a young woman stood before her, eyes dark as the river's depths, framed by loose strands of hair that clung to her damp forehead. She wore the simple garments of the village, but there was something restless about her, as though she did not belong to the life she had been given. "You are Mahima, the tattooist?" the girl asked, her voice steady despite the tremor in her fingers. "I am," Mahima replied. "Who are you?" "Lena," the girl said, stepping inside. "And I need your help." Mahima studied her. The girl could not have been more than 17, her skin still untouched by ink. In their village, tattoos were earned, gifted by age, deeds, or necessity. For someone so young to seek them out was unusual. "What is it you seek?" Mahima asked, her voice measured. Lena hesitated, her fingers curling at her sides before she exhaled. "A mark that will change my fate." Mahima's brows furrowed. "Ink does not change fate. It only records it." The girl shook her head. "Then record me as something more than what I am." There was desperation in her voice, and Mahima knew better than to turn her away. She gestured for Lena to sit, the fire casting flickering shadows on the walls. "Tell me," Mahima said, "what is it you run from?" For a moment, Lena was silent, her gaze dropping to her hands. Then, in a voice just above a whisper, she spoke. "They have chosen a husband for me." The weight of those words settled between them. Arranged marriages were common, a way to secure alliances, strengthen bloodlines, and preserve traditions. Love was a luxury, often sacrificed at the altar of duty. "And you do not wish it?" Mahima asked. Lena's laugh was bitter. "How can I, when I do not even know him? When I am but a bargaining piece in my father's plans?" She lifted her gaze, something fierce burning within. "I would rather carve my own fate." Mahima knew this feeling too well. She had once believed in choice, in love, in defying the path others had set for her. And she had paid the price. She stood, reaching for the bowl of ink beside her. "If you seek change, then you must be willing to bear it on your skin," she murmured. Lena nodded. Mahima worked in silence, her hands steady despite the years that had stolen her youth. Each stroke of the needle carried purpose, each line woven with something beyond mere artistry. The ink spread across Lena's skin in delicate patterns, swirling in symbols older than the village itself. But something was different. The ink did not settle like it usually did. Instead, it pulsed, faintly at first, then stronger, as if the very skin beneath it breathed. The air in the hut thickened, a presence stirring in the unseen spaces between them. Mahima felt a shiver run down her spine. Lena gasped, her fingers brushing against the fresh tattoo. What is this?" Mahima's heart pounded. She had seen many things in her time, but never this. The ink shimmered under the fire's glow, as though alive. And then, a feeling, like something waking after a long slumber, settled over her. A memory, a voice she had not heard in decades. "Mahima," it whispered. She staggered back, breath caught in her throat. No, it was not possible. The spirits did not speak unless summoned. Lena's eyes widened. "What is happening?" Mahima stared at the tattoo, realization dawning like a slow-moving storm. The symbols, she knew them, not as mere markings, but as something far older, something once forbidden. They were the same patterns that had been inked onto her skin before her curse, the same ones that had stolen her youth. Panic gripped her. Had she unknowingly passed on her fate to this girl? Had she condemned her to the same cruel punishment? "No," Mahima whispered, reaching for Lena's arm, as if she could undo what had been done. But the ink had already set, and deep within her bones, she felt it stir. A shift, a ripple through time itself. The price had been paid, and the past was waking. The change was undeniable. Mahima's hands trembled as she gazed at her reflection in the small bronze mirror. The years that had once weighed heavily upon her bones had vanished like mist under the morning sun. Her skin was smooth again, the deep wrinkles erased, her once silver hair now dark and flowing over her shoulders like a river at night. She lifted a trembling hand to her face, barely daring to believe what she saw. The magic had not just stirred, it had reversed time itself. Lena sat across from her, equally stunned, fingers grazing the inked patterns now etched onto her own skin. The girl had not aged, nor had she been harmed, but the marks had bound her to something beyond comprehension. The air between them pulsed with unspoken knowledge, an ancient force that had reshaped their fates in a single moment. "I didn't ask for this," Mahima whispered, her voice no longer carrying the rasp of age. "Not again." Lena, still reeling for what she had witnessed, stared at her. "What does it mean?" Mahima's lips parted, but she hesitated. The last time she had been young, love had led her to ruin. She had once believed that love could break curses, defy destiny, but she had been wrong. Love had not saved her, it had condemned her. And now, as she looked at her own reborn form, she feared that fate was demanding its price. A soft rustling outside made them both turn. Mahima's heart stilled. She knew that sound, a presence, familiar and haunting. The door creaked open. He stood in the threshold, unchanged by time. Jaren. The name was a whisper in Mahima's mind, a name she had buried along with her past. He looked exactly as he had the last time she had seen him. Young, strong, his dark eyes filled with the same longing that had once been her undoing. The air in the hut grew thick, heavy with memory and magic. Lena looked between them, sensing the unspoken tension. "Who?" Mahima barely heard her. "Ow," she asked, her voice barely above a breath. Jaren stepped inside, his gaze locked onto hers. "The ink binds more than just flesh, Mahima. It binds time itself. When you lost your youth, I lost you. And when it returned," he trailed off, his expression unreadable. "So did I." Her stomach twisted. This was impossible. He should have aged. He should have lived his life without her, grown old, moved on. Yet here he was, standing before her like a specter of the past. Lena looked at them both, realization dawning in her wide eyes. This was a love story? Mahima let out a bitter laugh, though there was no humor in it. "No," she said. "It was a tragedy." Jaren's jaw tightened. "Does it have to be?" The question hung in the air between them. She had loved him once, so fiercely that she had believed nothing could part them. But the village had disagreed. Love was not meant to defy the elders, nor the spirits who wove the fabric of their fates. She and Jaren had tried to escape, to carve a life beyond the boundaries of their world. The punishment had been swift. The ink she had worn on her skin had been transformed into a curse, stripping her of youth, condemning her to a life of isolation. And Jaren, he had vanished. She had believed him dead, but now he was here, and she was young again. The weight of it settled in her chest. Had she been given another chance? Or was this merely fate playing another cruel trick? Lena, sensing the storm between them, rose to her feet. "Whatever this is, I don't think it's done with you yet." Mahima's gaze flickered to her, then back to Jaren. He hadn't moved, but she could see the question in his eyes, the silent plea. Was she willing to risk it all again? She had spent decades believing that love had been her undoing. But what if it had been the only thing that could save her? A gust of wind swept through the open door, carrying the scent of the forest, of rain yet to fall. Mahima inhaled deeply. Perhaps the story was not over yet.